Hi everyone, welcome to the MAA Digital Humanities webinar. I'm just going to give it, we've still got quite a lot of people coming in through the waiting rooms. I'm just going to give it another minute or two, and then we will get started. Okay, we seem to have a decent amount of people in from the waiting room now, so we'll start to get started anyway. Welcome to the penultimate Centennial MAA Centennial year of Digital Humanities project showcases. Hosted by the Medieval Academy's Digital Humanities Committee and the Graduate Student Committee. We've got, following our format that we had going in spring semester, we took a break over the summer, and now we're back with our next workshop. And if you've been to any of these workshops, webinars before, you'll have seen that we will have two short presentations and then hopefully ample time for questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box or the chat box. Hopefully you know where those are from our many years on Zoom, and I will ask our presenters those questions. We'll have the two presentations first and then the Q&A for both of them following. However, if I see any questions coming up in the Q&A box that are kind of pressing or urgent, I will ask those questions immediately after the talk. So before we get started and I introduce our first speaker, I just want to let you know that we do have one more Digital Humanities Showcase scheduled, and that is next month. So on November the 21st, again from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we will have another showcase of two digital humanities projects. This time we will have Immersive Realms and AnyBook Experience. So if you're interested in virtual reality, then that could be a great session for you. But we will get started now, and we will hear from our first speaker, who is Atria Larson. And my phone is misbehaving and wouldn't display my screen. So excuse me while I flick between tabs for the introduction. So yes, Atria Larson worked under Ken Pennington and earned her PhD in medieval studies, that's history, philosophy and theology, at the Catholic University of America in 2010. She has published widely on Gratian, the history of medieval canon law, the history of penance, the textual history of the Decretum, and 12th century glosses on Matthew. Her first monograph treated Gratian's Tractatus de Penitentia, which she edited and translated in a separate book. She has co-edited 4 volumes, most recently Thomas Aquinas and Medieval Canon Law with Justin Anderson of Seton Hall University. And she is currently working on co-editing with Stefan Dussel, a companion to Gratian and the Decretum, and she is working on a second monograph on the theology of canon law in the long 12th century. Currently, she is Associate Professor of Medieval Christianity at St. Louis University, where she is also the Associate Director of its Centre for Medieval and Renaissance Studies. So thank you very much. Atria, if you want to unmute yourself and share your screen.
Thank you, Vicki. I'm going to share my screen so I can put up some slides for you about my project, Gallery of Glosses. Yeah, let me just get into presenter mode for you. All right, Vicki, let me know if that's not coming through, but I'm assuming it looks good. All right, very good. So, Gallery of Glosses. I'm titling this presentation a two-part digital humanities project to record and publish glosses on medieval manuscripts. I've tried to, in this presentation, give you ideas of the history of the project and its current state, and hopefully show you its potential. What we hope is its potential for medieval studies, broadly speaking, and not just any one particular discipline. So here's a brief rundown of the history of the project, which really began, was conceived under the idea of kind of a traditional edition, a print edition of a text. And with consultations with various folks, it fairly quickly emerged that this would be much better as a digital humanities project. So here's a sample Montpellier manuscript. There are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of manuscripts just like this on the Bible, even dated just from the 12th century. This is a 12th century manuscript. This one is special because we know it's one of Prince Henry's books. But it just gives you an idea of what I was looking at several years ago, maybe 2018. And I was thinking about the glossa ordinaria on the Bible, and the initial idea was to go back earlier into the earlier 12th century and to try to understand the textual development of the glosses on biblical books and to try to get at what emerged out of the school of law. And so, for instance, this might be very interesting to see what kind of gloss maybe then Peter Lombard, for instance, was using in Paris in the 1150s, before you get the solidified glossa ordinaria around the turn of the 13th century. So the initial idea was to just do maybe a print edition. But the more I looked into the manuscript history, you run very quickly into problems. Okay, so you have many different versions of a text. You have the textual transmission of individual glosses is fairly stable, but what glosses exist in what manuscripts is highly variable. In addition to the fact that in many manuscripts, what is a marginal gloss shows up as an interlinear gloss in other manuscripts and vice versa. So if one were to try to do a print edition and show this textual development in the 12th century, you have to answer some questions, such as most basically, like which version are you going to present? And if you're going to try to present the growth and development of a text, how do you do that in an analog traditional print volume? And how do you account for all of the unique glosses? And then you begin to wonder, well, if you do find a way to present something, what information are you actually losing, though, out of the authenticity of the medieval texts and manuscripts? And so maybe a digital program, a database or website would be better for preserving this wealth and wide range of information. And those considerations led then to another consideration of what if we could build something that would be useful for research on glosses on any medieval text, not just the biblical glosses. So initially, I had won an internal grant at St. Louis University, and our test case to kind of develop a proof of concept was working with the biblical glosses, and we focused on Matthew chapter 5, the chapter where the Beatitudes are, and other pretty well-known passages in the Gospel of Matthew. That project was called Glossing Matthew, and I'll show you in a second what that looked like. Things have changed quite significantly since then. So this was Glossing Matthew, focusing on Matthew 5. That was the test case that we incorporated into an NEH Level 2 Digital Humanities Advancement Grant. As saying, here's what we've done so far. This is the seed idea then for developing something bigger, broader, something more applicable to all disciplines within medieval studies. And so we made this pitch to move beyond Matthew and beyond biblical glosses to other types of authoritative texts as well. We won that grant, and that ran from September 2022 until August 2024. Thankfully, that grant was completed several months before the NEH grant terminations that occurred last April. We had a major breakthrough during that NEH grant, I would say, about halfway through the project. In glossing Matthew, and even the way we were initially thinking about things when we applied for the NEH grant, initially we had structured the data by prioritizing the manuscript. And this comes out of the print world where, I've worked on editions myself. And of course, when you do a print edition of a text, you're taking a manuscript version of that text and you begin to transcribe that manuscript. And so what we realized is that for the DH project, we actually needed to do a mental concept shift and adjust our way of thinking about the structure of the data. And so we moved away from the manuscript, the individual manuscript being kind of the prime or central point or foundational piece of the data structure, to individual glosses being that structural piece. And so when I talk to people about this, I talk about like a big G gloss versus the smaller lowercase g glosses that show up in different manuscripts. So the way we can think about this is you have a text, a gloss that might show up in multiple manuscripts. It might only show up in one manuscript, but it might show up in multiple manuscripts. And so each of those little glosses in that manuscript is an example and a witness to the big G gloss. And so we completely transformed the way we were thinking about the data and how it would need to be structured. This shows you the beginning work of glossing Matthew, where we were utilizing TPen, which still is in existence, and TPen 3.0 is in development. So if you're looking for a great free program for transcribing line by line in manuscripts, TPen is great to check out. So we did transcriptions line by line in TPen, and then we pulled out that text and we had it all organized according to different manuscripts. So again, back in 2020, 2021, this is the type of thing we ended up. This is what the Glossing Matthew portal looked like. And you can see more or less, it's kind of like a very, very simple manuscript catalog with some links and some images pulling in from this case, the VatLib site with the digitized Palatina manuscript. But the main organizational unit was in fact the manuscript. So again, as I've said, we completely changed. I'm going to show you now what the project currently looks like. And it has two different parts. There's the data management platform, which is at glossing.rayroom.io. And then there's the public-facing website. So the first one, the data management platform, would be oriented for scholars to use as they are encountering glosses and they want to record those glosses and record different information about them, including the manuscripts that they're found in. And but they have complete control over whether it is kept private to them and their account or whether these things are published on the public website. So on the data management platform, you would have a Rayrum account, and you would go in and utilize that for your own projects. The public website, of course, is open to anyone to browse the glosses that are currently on there, but only the things that have officially been published by the scholar who has transcribed the glosses and is doing research with them. So this is what the homepage of the Rayrum site, the data management platform, looks like. And so there you can see with these 6 blue boxes, there's a variety of ways to enter in. Probably the top left one would be the one that would be most frequently used where you are creating a new gloss. But if you were pulling in massive amounts of transcription data out of something like TPEN, or some other online repository or text base, you would be able to pull that text in and then identify the glosses within that text. And that's what the detect boxes are in the center, on the top and the top right box. Once the glosses already exist in the database, then the bottom row are things that you can do. So the manage glosses is really where you decide either you're going to publish a gloss publicly, whether you're going to hide that gloss, or whether you're going to delete a gloss if you made errors to it or decided you don't. There's other problems. The browse gloss collection would be to be able to go in and find glosses that already are there. Maybe they need some updating. You want to add more tags. And then browsing manuscripts is we do have basic information about the manuscripts where the glosses are found. And so that button would be used to explore the different manuscripts that have been utilized. Now, this is what the top half of a page looks like if you are updating a gloss. So at the top are the manuscript witnesses to the gloss. So this particular gloss I have found in 4 manuscripts, one in Engelberg, one in London, one in Montpellier, one in Oxford. We have the full text of the gloss, and that can be you can insert references like I have there, scriptural citations. And then we have some possibilities right now for different languages. The stuff that I work with is all in Latin, but that's not to say that you couldn't put in something like Old English or Old French glosses. And that's an area where we can expand the language possibilities quite easily. The canonical reference locator is our term, sort of catch-all term that is meant to refer to the passage or the authoritative text that this gloss is glossing, right? What is this gloss annotating? It's annotating the verse, Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. The bottom half of that same page includes an incipit, or you could come up with another title for the gloss. All of our different fields have expandable carets, so we try to explain to users what we mean by particular fields. The target text would be an example of what in like a traditional print edition, we might talk about the lemma. So if a person is glossing a particular word within Matthew 5, verse 9, that would go there. There's spaces for entering a standard print edition of a text that is being glossed. There's spaces for internal and external notes, for external resource links, and then adding tags, which is completely flexible. So it would be up to each individual scholar, depending on what they were hoping to get at in their research, what they wanted to tag. So for me, in this particular example, I have come up with tags of OT, or Old Testament citation, and NT, New Testament citation, as well as putting some key terms in the nominative case in Latin. This is another example. This one is from the world of canon law. This is the Glossa Ordinaria on the Liber Extra, or the Decretaliis Gregorii Noni, Book 1, Title 2, Chapter 9. This is taken from Ed Reno, who's at Adelphi University, his digital decretals project. So with his permission, we are incorporating all of his transcribed glosses into Gallery of Glosses. So what you have in the top left is, instead of a manuscript reference, we're referring to the Editio Romana taken from the digital decretals. And if you were to click on that, you would get more information along with Ed Reno's site, so it's properly attributed. Then we have the gloss text itself. You'll see the world of canon law, as you may or may not know, is filled with technical reference systems and citations to other legal texts. So you can see there that we've maintained the Editio Romana references to those texts, but we've also included in square brackets a modern citation form and identified all of those texts, whether they're something from Justinian's Codex is being cited or something from Gratian's Decretum, and we are tagging those. We're also tagging jurist names, so such as Vincentius Hispanus and Bernardus Parmensis, who are referenced in this gloss. We have the incipit name for the gloss, and then in this case, we do have a lemma. We have a particular word within that text, sociis, in the bottom right, that this gloss is attached to. I'm just giving you one, to close out here, I'm giving you one sample web page from the public-facing site, the galleryofglosses.org. So if you were to go in and click on Browse All Glosses, you would get a long list. We have over 1,000 glosses currently in Gallery of Glosses. And I picked one that's, again, from the biblical text. This is a gloss on Matthew 5, verse 2, on the specific words aperiens o suum. So you see the different formatting for the public site with the canonical reference locator and the tags up top, the gloss text itself in a light gray box. And then the manuscript witnesses are all populated underneath. And if you went in the right-hand side of that table, you would be able to click on that and get the specific version of the text of that gloss in that manuscript, which then, of course, you could compare to other texts and other manuscripts, or to what we as scholars have decided is what we're going to identify as the kind of authoritative version of the big G gloss in the gray box there. So in closing, I do want to give special thanks to my developers here at St. Louis University and our research computing group, Patrick Cuba and Brian Haberberger. They're awesome. They're also the team behind the TPEN 3.0. And so again, check that out. And then I want to thank these 5 individuals who were available from afar, but also traveled to St. Louis in summer 2024. And we did a lot of discussions together and testing of Gallery of Glosses. So I'm really grateful to Brandon, Abigail, Porrick, Ed, and Jeff from these different institutions. And you'll notice that intentionally we gathered people from a variety of disciplines because we did want to make Gallery of Glosses something useful for people in English and philosophy, theology, history, languages, whatever their expertise is. So what is happening next? Well, there's going to be more development on TPEN 3.0, and so opportunities for partnering with that and importing transcriptions from TPEN. We are currently adding many more glosses from canon law, those ordinary glosses on the Liber Extra from Ed Reno's site, as well as other glosses on Gratian's Decretum. Definitely, I would love to see other people start to use the Rayrum site and expand our disciplinary representation and test this out maybe on some glosses on Old English poetry or who knows what, right? I hope the possibilities are endless. and then getting feedback on how it works in your discipline for your texts. There's my email address, atria.larson@slu.edu. So I'll leave it there and turn it over to Vicki and to Jean.
Great, thank you so much. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A or the chat function at any time. And then unless I see something massively pressing, we'll hold questions and discussions until after both of our presenters. So our second presenter is Jean Lyman. And Jean Lyman is an independent scholar with a PhD in English from the University of Virginia. He has had a long-standing interest in the digital humanities and has delivered 20 conference presentations here and abroad touching on the subject. In 2020, in recognition of his decade of work as treasurer of the Medieval Academy, Jean was named co-recipient of the Academy's Robert L. Kendrick Caro Award for Outstanding Service to Medieval Studies. He hopes that the software he is presenting today will be a useful contribution to the field. So please, feel free to share your screen, Jean. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Vicki, and thanks to the committee for giving me this opportunity. I'm looking for feedback, and you'll note the email address at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to post it at the end of the talk, too. Although the opening of this talk focuses on the pedagogical uses of the software that I'll be demonstrating, I trust that its use as a scholarly tool will become evident by its close. In 1958, E. Talbot Donaldson produced an edition that sought to make the pleasure of Chaucer as accessible as possible. In Donaldson's judgment, the principal hindrance to a full enjoyment of Chaucer is the 14th century English, in which he wrote. Given the impact of the material turn in medieval studies since Donaldson's day, we may well ask what might be the principal hindrance to a student's enjoyment of the finest physical copy of the Canterbury Tales, the Ellesmere manuscript. A straightforward answer here follows Donaldson's lead. Students do not respond to a viewing of the Ellesmere manuscript in a way that comes close to the enjoyment intended by its creators, owing primarily to difficulties deciphering the medieval hand in which it is written. My software seeks to make the Ellesmere manuscript more accessible by offering an interactive experience broadly analogous to the result of Donaldson's careful efforts to lighten the task of reading Chaucer's language. To that end, its principal user interface is shaped by a heuristic design that prioritizes the ease with which a reader's eye maps scribal letter forms into those of a close transcription of the inscribed text. Now, here's a little experiment. Please gaze at this screen and see if you can quickly, because we don't have a lot of time, which of these two samples of text and image is easier to decode? Well, if I were to turn to the cognitive psychologists that I've consulted on this and give you a lot of language about transsciatic memory, the answer would come out the bottom one. And I hope that that's the one you chose. That's the one most people choose. Is this then a way of presenting the text in a way that will allow students to decode it with greater ease? Well, yes and no. If we were to make a text of the Ellesmere manuscript that followed this prescription exactly, we'd lose all sense of context and all sense of continuity, as you can see from this illustration. However, if we were to go back to a more skeuomorphic view and had text on one side and image on the other, I think we'd run into the same kind of problems that students are facing now, which is it's difficult to move from one side of a page to another page and decode the scribal hand that appears, in this case, on the right. Well, what to do? Well, let's see if we can combine these two methods. And this is the basic screen for presentation in the software that I've developed. You'll notice that at the foot of the page, you get the enlarged line from the manuscript and its transcription, and up on the page, in order to keep some context, in order to have a sense of where that line occurs, you have highlight both in the printed text and in the manuscript itself. Now, please note that the text is folded. And this is one of the things that has to be done if you're going to make a screen that doesn't involve a lot of scrolling, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a really bad distraction. So this is the basic screen that I developed for this software. Now, we're going to get to a demonstration. And before I do, I just want to point out three things that I think are very important. One, software that presents a manuscript to you should keep you aware of where you are in the manuscript and on the manuscript page. Two, it should provide easy ways of navigating from one part of the manuscript to another. And three, if your software is clever enough, it will prompt discovery and hypothesis testing of those discoveries and engage the reader even more. The quote from Amber Chase at the bottom of the screen is something that I keep in mind nearly every day that I write code, which is the ideal app or technology is one that becomes invisible in its functioning. It provides us a utility that we need without drawing attention to itself. Okay, so now let's switch and look at the software itself. Here is the first page of the Ellesmere manuscript. It's laid out, as I said, and you can see as you mouse over the text, each line appears at the bottom in its enlarged state with a printed line above it and offers itself for rather straightforward decoding. And you can also mouse over the manuscript and have the same effect. Now, mousing isn't the best way to continuously read a manuscript, however. So the software also provides a keyboard alternative. And the easiest key to hit, the one you can hit in the dark, is the space bar. And so that's the key I chose to have to give the signal to the software that it should move on. If you want to go up, you hit the U key. This is navigation within the page. Now, what about navigation within the manuscript? Well, at the foot of the page, when you're not paying attention to the specific lines, you get a visual index of the entire piece with abbreviations of what the tails are. And you see over here an indication of what folio you're on and what tail you're dealing with. This is also a navigational device. You can grab it, move it, and the manuscript will open to where you left the page. You can also use these arrows to go back and forth, or you can use the tab key to move to the first page of every tale. And when you're moving around in a manuscript, going to textual divisions is often a task that you want to accomplish. So you can go backwards, and if you press the shift key, you can go backwards. Sorry, you can go forwards and backwards that way. Well, I've tried to illustrate some of the ways that you can be oriented in the manuscript, some of the ways that you can navigate it. But they come with a certain cost. If I'm over here on the manuscript and go up over here, I'm not seeing anything, except the smaller image here. So in order to remedy that and give fuller exploration, there's a magnifier. And you can go up and magnify some of the demi-verdict that surrounds the text, some of the caps. And I'm going to go back because it's a fun thing. Whoops, what happened? I'm sorry, is anyone seeing anything, or am I?
No, we're fine. I think it might be your end. We're
Okay,
looking,
I
yeah.
guess I hit myself out of it. I apologize, folks.
Okay.
I want to go back to the beginning of The Knight's Tale. And use that magnifier, because there's a fun thing that happens when you look at it. And this is the sort of thing that you could ask a student to do. Compare some opening pages of tales and see how they're different. Um, have a look at the flowers on the top of this decorative piece. They're all pointing towards you. Have a look at the ones at the bottom. They're all pointing away from you. Um, this is interesting because not only is it just interesting in itself, but it's the only instance of this happening anywhere in the manuscript. So what you're being offered, I'm trying to suggest, is a tool for discovery, as well as one for simply looking at the page. Okay. Now I've talked about the index at the bottom of the page. Let me go to another kind of index. Here you've got on the left-hand side an index that is of the tales and an index of the folios. And if I click on any of those boxes, I'll go exactly to where it is. But look what happens when I mouse over it. Because when I mouse over and go to folio 84R, recto, I'm told right away the extent of the extent of the Sumner's Tale of which it's a part. If I go to the tales themselves, their folios are highlighted. So you're given some additional guidance about where you are in the manuscript and how the manuscript is put together. If I just click on this, there I go to the Reeves Tale. Well, I'll go back. I want now to speak about another capacity built into this, and this is really a discovery capacity, and that is for searching. This is a very powerful search engine that's in this. I'm going to search here to begin with, just as an illustration, using a regular expression for the word love. Okay, and I've got caps on. Whoops, I've got caps on. I'm sorry, I must have hit that key. Okay, my apologies to you. I need to re-enter that. That's right. Well, I'm going to go to another search, and I'm sorry that that one, I don't know whether, well, uh, let's look at whether we can see all of the rhyme words in the poetry. Okay. You can see each count as it appears in the, oh no, I didn't do the rhyme words. I'm sorry. I did do every word in the manuscript. I apologize. This is a count of every word in the manuscript, and a frequency table, which is available, shows you the most common words. I put the alpha frequency up first, the most common words in the Elsewhere manuscript. It'd be very interesting as a way of analyzing Chaucer's language and scribal practice. The frequency table gives you a way to draw together dialect variants on the words. I want to do one more search, and I apologize for I think it's I don't know what it is. Let me search for dialect variants. And I'm going to search for the word again. at least as it occurs in modern English. Okay. Well, heaven help me. I hope I put this regular expression in correctly. I can see already I need to change it. All right, this is every instance of the word again in the poem. Now, if I click, say on one of these folios that it occurs in, you're going to see what happens at the bottom of the screen, and that is every instance is mapped in a graph. And at the top of the graph, you get the count of occurrences on that page. And if I click on the top of the graph, I'll go to the page in which it occurs. And the line in which it occurs is highlighted. Let's try another one in the verse. And again, this is a way of exploring the text. And actually, you can find that the distribution of the spellings of these words is quite interesting in terms of Chaucer's poetic form. One of the variants occurs 20 times, 19 times at the end of a line. And the words that it rhymes with are spelt exactly the same way, which suggests that there's a phonetic tie between that spelling and the words that he's using to rhyme. All right, well, I've gone 15 minutes. Let me just quickly, I'll just put some screens up, Vicki, if it's all right. There are scholarly applications to this software: proofreading and transcription, paleography, dialectology, study of scribal practices, editing, and using TEI markup to analyze the intersection of textual and codological features. There's a piece of software that precedes the software I showed you that finds the middle of lines. And when it does, you could use it to transcribe. This is a mock-up of a transcription program that I'm writing. Okay, I won't show you this. Next steps, and I'll just focus on the top one. I'm going to produce a web-based app that will display this software and the Ellesmere manuscript over the web. My acknowledgments are to the Huntington Library, the Norman Blake editions of the Canterbury Tales, and believe it or not, to the 19th century edition and transcription of the tales by F.J. Furnival, because it contains the marginalia transcribed, and the Blake edition doesn't. Thank you all, and again, if I can get feedback from you if you have interest, I'd appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jean. Please, we know that we've heard from both of our panelists. You're very welcome to put your questions either in the Q&A box or in the chat function. Let me just pull up the chat, see if we've got any questions in there. Okay, yeah, we do have a question from Ellen Arnold. Would Jean be willing to consult with people about his software?
Yes, I'm looking for ways of sharing it. As an independent scholar, you find a certain amount of isolation, and being able to share this is a real privilege. And again, Vicki and your committee, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Great.
Please drop me an email if you have any thoughts along that line.
Perfect. We've also got Atria was talking about TPEN, and also if anybody's interested in that, there is a link has been put into the webinar chat. Let me see. Yes, Jean, if you could put your email in the chat function, perhaps, so that people can find it now.
Sure.
Let me see. Okay, yep. Question, Atria, for you from Lucy Barnhouse. Could I ask if Dr. Larson would be willing to expand on her hopes for additional participation in the Gallery of Glosses, which she mentioned at the end of her talk?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's interested in using it and trying it out and giving feedback, we'd be very grateful. Maybe Lucy, could you put in the chat, is there a particular text or set of glosses or area that you have in mind right now?
Okay, nothing in there yet. So if you want to talk further while she's typing, and then if I see it, I can come back to it. Oh no, there she is. Okay, I was wondering about assignments for students, for example.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that has already been worked out in TPEN 3.0 as a transcription site is that there's different types of assignments and different roles that can be given to teachers, instructors, TAs, and students for different projects. And that same type of thing, the Rayroom ecosystem, as it were, you can log in and give different roles to different users. And so you could certainly, I mean, one of the nice things with a student assignment is that you would be able to allow them to work in Gallery of Glosses, put in some glosses, practice with that. And you would have, as the professor, you would have power and control over which glosses are made public or not, right? So maybe it's a project that you want to keep in-house just for the class, but not publish yet on the public-facing website, or maybe not ever. And that would be fine, because with a really simple click of a button, you can change a gloss either from being hidden to being public and back again. So you can manage that quite easily.
Great. Yeah, we have a note about that anyone can create an account at the Rayroom site, but that people need to contact you directly to publish as a contributor. Great. Okay. Let me see. I have a hand up from Sarah Anderson, but Sarah, I'm afraid I can't call on people in the audience. So if you have a question, please use the chat or the Q&A functions. While we wait for more questions for discussion from the audience, I do have a question for you. And that is, like, what are your, I mean, well, Atria, you touched on the issues with funding, which are sadly all too familiar with us now. And Jean, you talked about the difficulties as an independent scholar trying to develop these things. I mean, what are your plans for both of your projects going forward, considering the realities in which us in the digital humanities find ourselves?
I've got a kind of three-pronged plan. I mentioned trying to put this up as a web app. Right now, the software that I designed is in something called Electron, but that translates very easily to a web app. I'll run it as a test on a site that I can just pay for, but I'm looking for an institution, and have had conversation with at least one institution that has expressed interest about mounting this on their website. So that's one thing. The other is Electron apps are self-contained. The nice thing about them is you can download them and then you do the work. You don't have to be connected to a mainframe. And that, in some cases, is really important. But I'm trying to develop it so that individual scholars will be able to take their projects, they have a manuscript, get images, register the lines, and that little thing that I showed you at the very end very quickly, and go through and either transcribe and or examine. This is great for proofreading, I should say. I found more than 300 errors in the transcript that I mentioned. Now, I'm not saying that they were caused by the professionals, scholars who did them. A good number of them were because of what I take to be a kind of reloading of the data into another format on a computer. Number of things were dropped. But it's a great way to spot really small differences if you're proofreading. And if you're going to go with Transcriptus to do automatic transcribing, well, there are two ways you could use it. One would be to build the 20 pages or so of transcription that you need in order to train Transcriptus. And the other is to take the output, which may have up to a 10% error, and go through and correct it. So I'm sorry, Atria, go ahead. I didn't mean to talk to them.
Thanks. Yeah, it is obviously a tough environment right now. Fortunately, as I said, Gallery of Glosses reached its end, but we actually had a level 3 DH grant for TPEN 3.0, and that was terminated in April. So it's a new world. We're very lucky at St. Louis University. I think we're more fortunate than many that we have Patrick and Brian working in our research computing group. And we're able to keep these long-term projects moving ahead, maybe not quite at the speed that initially we had hoped for. For Gallery of Glosses, it's fortunately I have some college level support to have a this year kind of half of a postdoc position, someone who is continuing to add content to Gallery of Glosses. And so we are continuing to add glosses, and then when we run into problems, we send our questions over to Patrick and Brian, and they fix things on the technical side of things. So I'm very fortunate with that. I think at some point I'll feel psychologically ready to get out and be looking more for other big grant possibilities. I'm not there yet, and anybody who has even written one of those applications knows just how much work that is. So in the current climate, I'm just inclined to keep things moving along as best we can for the foreseeable future. And then we'll see when opportunities arise that seem like they might be another good big funding. But I mean, I certainly have ideas of what could be done with Gallery of Glosses if we had significant more funding. Vicki, I saw a couple questions in the chat. Is it okay if I address? I think Patrick and Brian are helping out with Brian Long's questions. Oh, no, that was with the other question from Patrick McBrien. Yeah, and Patrick, the other thing I'd say there is, working to TPEN 2.0 or 3. Yeah, so you can do that. The other thing is, if you work in TPEN, you would want to work in TPEN if you want to have the ability to pull in images of entire folios, and you were wanting to get to capture also an image, very similar actually to what was at the bottom of Jean's pages, right? So if you want to capture along with your transcription of a gloss, a digital encoded image of that line of text, then TPEN is awesome. If you're just more interested in recording the glosses textually, you could also just work directly in Gallery of Glosses and bypass the TPEN step and just work directly in Gallery of Glosses and use that create new gloss. That was the top left blue box on the homepage of Gallery of Glosses, and you can work in that to add those glosses one by one. Did Patrick and Brian work yet to talk about the licensing. If Patrick and Brian can address that licensing question from Brian Long, that would be helpful. They would be the better people to answer that.
Right. Thank you. There is a question here from Pamela Yee. Dr. Lyman, does your dynamic display work for prose manuscripts or transcriptions, or is it limited to verse for now?
No, it works with prose. I didn't have a chance. I think I flashed a bit of the Tale of Melibus up on the screen, or maybe it was the Parson's Tale. But no, and it was it was a 3-week programming job to make it work with prose. In fact, it'll display prose in the same fashion as it does verse. The line on the page corresponds to the line in the transcription. The transcription on the Norman Blake website that I used had line feeds at the end of every line in the prose text, and I was able to key off those and make the line breaks so that I could do that. But yes, it works with prose.
Great, thank you, Jean. We've got a couple more minutes, so please, put any more questions that you've got in there.
Could I add a couple of things?
Yes, of course. Yes, I should have said, of course, if either of our presenters have anything they want to add or questions to ask one another, you're of course very welcome to as well, not limited to the audience.
I wanted to say at the end of my talk, I realize, the Huntington and other libraries don't want you redistributing images. The software I've designed doesn't do that. It uses IIIF protocols, calls down an image, and then stores it, but only stores it in a way that the browser can get at. If you were to go to your file system, you couldn't see that image. So it doesn't allow for redistribution, in other words. And I'm wondering, does TPen do that? Or do you have the images on the screen? I mean, do you have to have the image file on the machine that it's executing on? So it also uses those protocols.
Yes.
Terrific.
Yes.
There's more. Yep, there's more information coming through in the webinar chat on that for you.
Yeah. So, for instance, for all of my glossing Matthew manuscripts that were in TPen, and I think I got up to a total of 18. Some of them were IIIF images that we were just pulling from elsewhere, from their home repositories. Some of them I also purchased. When I needed to, microfilms, for instance, from French municipal libraries through the central place in Paris, the IRHT. And so I also had digitized versions of black and white microfilms that then I could upload images. Sometimes I have JPEGs and PDFs, so it can accommodate a number of different things, but the ideal thing is that we have top quality digitized manuscripts and that they're in IIIF, and we pull those in from remotely.
Okay.
Great. Well, we're in the final 2 minutes. So while anybody dashes off anything last minute that they desperately want to ask, I will thank our 2 speakers today. And I think it's that these 2 projects really came together really nicely in this particular webinar, particularly since you're both open to hearing from new participants and shared your details for that. So thank you very much for contributing. And just to remind everyone that we do have another Medieval Academy Digital Humanities webinar, and that is next month. And have I closed on after I kept it open. Here it is. It is on immersive realms and any book experience, and it is on November the 21st, again from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, so thank you. We're now at full time. So thank you again, Dr. Lyman and Dr. Larson, for
you.
speaking to us today.